Okay. Okay, very good. So I think we're all set here. 1 minute. Okay, so again, good morning, everyone. My name is Sarah, and I want to talk this morning a little bit about a presentation that we have here and add my own input on it: culture, values, and the relationship with the elderly patient. This is our work. This is our basic skills and tools for our work. I always like to think that our personality is our basic skills in this kind of work. And the more we work on ourselves and on our personality, being good people and so on, I think that we improve our work. And so this is the basis for this presentation with you all. And before I do all of that, I want to commend you all for joining us here in Israel as being part of our caregiving community. And I'm sure it's been an exciting adventure and meeting families and home and way of life and 2 weeks. And I commend you and welcome you. And I hope your stay with us will be very, very enhancing and enjoyable. And so what are the basics to today? Human dignity, autonomy, tolerance. Values are universal for most people, for almost all of us. Try to be good and do our job as well as we can. But it's probably, also influenced by them and the religious upbringing that we've had. And I think these are the main sources of where we absorb our values. But there are universal ones that we all adhere to. And today I'd like to talk a little bit about all of that. What do these values mean in the caregiving work? Human dignity. I think everyone knows what that's about. Value that refers to a person's unique traits as a person. Dignity is the right of a person to be valued and respected for their own sake and to be treated ethically. Respect your patient's humanity, privacy, thoughts, feelings, opinions, beliefs, and body, and maintain your patient's privacy and dignity. Well, of course, these are in some way maybe obvious, but I would like to speak a little bit about that from my own experience. I've been in the caregiving profession with the elderly for many, many years. And I'd like to also say that I don't necessarily see the people you're going to be working with as necessarily patients. I think that sometimes they're clients and sometimes they're patients and sometimes they may be something else. But basically, it's a combination. They do pay you for a service. You are offering a service, so they are a client in many ways. And dignity is an important part of an important part of the way that we deal with people. Sometimes we may encounter people that look at us and see us as different than what they're used to, different color of skin. They may be prejudiced. They may have preconceptions of, all of those people are like this or all of those people are like that. But I think that we all have a little bit of a tendency to do that. And I think that no matter how people see us at first sight, after they get to know us, obviously, they have an opportunity to change their mind about us and for us to change our mind about them. I think that respecting a patient's humanity also means sometimes hearing things that we're not used to or that we don't agree with, and to learn to listen. Privacy is a big issue. I think that everyone is especially to learn how privacy is something that you need in life. You almost don't have any privacy. And so I think it's very important to be aware of that and to try to define with your client and patient what is appropriate and what isn't appropriate, when to be in their space, when to be in their presence. Sometimes privacy is even just that, being with someone or not, or just leaving them alone. And of course, in their home, you are entering their home. This is their safe place. So anything that is in the home, the way it's laid there, the way it is something that, gives them comfort. And before moving or touching or doing anything, you must ask if it's appropriate. It's respecting someone's privacy, their private things. Of course, their body, obviously, you'll be probably assisting people in their bathing, in their clothing, in their bed, and in their kitchen. And you have to understand that, some people have about being touched or having their certain thing on. So don't be offended. Don't take it personally. This is something of a client and patient or patient. And some of that has to do perhaps with, like I said, culture and religious aspect of that as well. Don't be offended if you're asked not to know a little bit about Jewish kashrut laws. Some people are very strict about it, others are less, but nonetheless, it's something that has to be openly and directly discussed, because this is a very important issue and can cause many conflicts. We'll talk about that a little bit later. And privacy and dignity, I think they go together hand in hand. And even though you don't understand why a person is responding in the way they are responding, you must understand that in the beginning, even though they may have already agreed, obviously they've agreed, and their family is waiting anxiously for you to come and be part of the caretaking team. And once you're there and once they understand what it entails, they may have negative feelings, negative thoughts, anger may arise, and probably out of frustration, not directly personally towards you, but towards their individual situation. Autonomy. Autonomy is the capacity to make an informed and uncoerced decision, self-direction, freedom, and especially moral independence. Give your patient the right to choose what he prefers to do, where he wants to go, and allow him to make his own decisions. And this is also a process of learning what your client or patient is capable of and is incapable of. And if you, for some reason, think that his decisions are, endangering him or someone else, then you must consult someone else in the family or within the agency to see how much of how much of their freedom should be in some way diversed. I don't like to say limited, but diversed in a different direction. Disabled into your situation. For you, it's in many ways a crisis, given or someone a days that, no, from now on, action again. Occasions is a crisis point when people realize the loss of things that they like to do in the past and so on. And so it's also so very important to see what they still can do, what they still can decide, how they can still influence their surroundings and be a viable person in their family, perhaps, or in their community. Give your patient the right to choose what he prefers to do, where he wants to go, and allow him to take his own decisions. And this again is something that is important, and do things quickly, and as being young and healthy, most of us do. But you have to understand that perhaps your client has a different pace and a different routine. And you must understand and also try to kind of move into their pace and space as they define it. Tolerance is a very important trait. Toleration is the allowing or permitting and acceptance of an action, idea, object, or person, which one can sometimes dislike or disagree with. Be tolerant to your patient and give yourself time to get to know each other, even if you don't agree with him sometimes. And issue, especially in the beginning, coming from ground, and the way we look, the way we smell, the way we eat, the way we move, and the way we respond to certain things is something that, is different than what our client or patient might be used to, and of course, what you are used to. And so it's very important, even though you don't understand why, more and compassion, stories, knickknacks, and encourage them to tell the stories of their past life. I think that you may have a wider understanding of their experience. You have to understand that Israel is basically a country of, so they're separate and individual. So tolerance is a very important trait for all of us. And of course, that brings us to empathy. The more we understand our necessarily agree or judge them, empathy is the capacity to understand and feel what another person is experiencing from within his frame of reference. What is the capacity to place oneself in one's range of emotional states? Try to empathize with your patient's physical and emotional condition. And of course, if someone is disabled in some way or in more than one way, then obviously he is suffering. Perhaps he's been suffering physically, but definitely he is emotionally also in a compromised situation. And so to try to understand that, I think is going to, excuse me 1 minute, I need to turn my phone on silence. I forgot to do that. Sorry about that. So I think that the more we know about our client and our patients and the people in their family, I think the easier it becomes to be empathetic and to realize what has brought them, what situation has brought them to react in a way that may not be pleasing or acceptable to us. But nonetheless, this is the way that he is dealing with whatever it is that needs to be dealt with. Compassion. Yes, this is an important part of our toolbox as caregivers. Sympathetic pity, concern for the suffering or misfortune of others. Compassion motivates people to go out of their way to help the physical, mental, and emotional pains of another and themselves. Well, all of you, I'm sure, experience compassion, because if you didn't, I don't think you would have chosen this position. And, especially if you, it takes a great deal of compassion to, and a big spirit and a loving heart to take care of people, period. And to take care of people in our family that we love dearly is also not an easy thing. But to come across, the globe and to do it for total strangers. And I know that you people are being paid, but it's, there are jobs that you don't get paid for. This is something that it's a calling. It's always been my calling in life. And if you didn't feel that it was part of your calling, I don't think you would have chosen this kind of a job. And it's actually not a job. It's a life. It is a life. And I identify and I commend you. I think that people that have an inherent need to be givers and caregivers. So this is, it's a wonderful prize to wake up in the morning and know that you're doing the right thing and then you're in the right place. So all of that is part of care. And I think that my training has been as a social worker, and I tend to see life through the glasses of a social worker. And I think that being a caregiver, you tend to see life and through the glasses of a caregiver. And I wish you all to be rewarded for it and not the opposite, not to be taken advantage of. Sometimes that also happens, and we'll talk about that in a little bit. Well, I would very much like for all of you to share with us your thoughts and your experiences. Perhaps some of you have had jobs like this in other countries or in your own country, and perhaps you have thoughts that you would like to voice and share with your colleagues and with us here, Margareta and I and Anat. And I invite you to do so now or on the chat and anytime during my talk here. And I'd like to suggest what is your opinion is the most important value in caregiving work, and are there any other values you believe that are important for caregiving work? And we can take a 5-minute break now and allow someone to think about these things and present it to us, and then we can continue to other subjects that we have in mind to speak about. So we'll see you in 5 minutes, everyone.
Following you, ma'am. We're catching you.
Okay, very good. So I will continue. The next subject I'd like to speak about is gender aspects in our caregiving work. We are all either men or women, or today it's modern to think of some in other definitions of those extremes. But as you probably know, if you identify with any of those things, then Israel is a very tolerant country, and for all kinds of gender definitions. And I'd like to speak about how gender may affect our work. Although caregiving and caregivers are thought to be only women, there are also many men who are caregivers, especially when a man needs to be cared for. Some of the female caregivers provide care for a man and live in the home with another man. And some of the male caregivers provide care for a woman or live in a home with a few carers, and changed about doing anything or disabled people or elder people changes things. And if also it may be a threat either to the disabled person for things for him, may be threatening, may provoke anger, may provoke negative feelings as well. Mourning for what he used to be and is no longer there, perhaps jealousy or taking jobs or functions that he is to do it. And the same for women. Sometimes when a woman comes into the home and there's also a husband or a wife, she may feel threatened. She may feel the care recipient or not, and not only the age difference, but also the energy may provoke, negative feelings, jealousy, anger, even depression, that someone is taking my place, doing it better, doing it faster, sort of speak in your face of what you can no longer do. Perhaps my husband will like them more than me. And so it's for stress. And I talk, what possibly people are thinking. It may give you a clue as to, perhaps what's going on in the house without things being spoken, but underneath the surface. And so I'm trying to understand the situation. This change may bring on all kinds of responses that perhaps you wouldn't have expected. And how does gender contribute to the caregiving relationship? Well, although women usually take care of children, adults, these abilities, women usually have the ability to care for others with empathy, compassion, concern, and love, but men can also have a good caregiving abilities. And some men like to take care of their family or work with care in the care fields. Your caregiving qualities are an asset. Be proud of them and use your caregiving. I also want messages are misunderstood and misread. And I think that being aware of the possibility to avoid them. I think that sometimes, if you're touching a man or a woman, you have to ask if it's appropriate for them, if to be touched in a certain way. In Israel, we are very touchy. We stroke on the hand, we give massages on the shoulders, on the hands, on the feet. All of that may or may not be appropriate on an individual basis. And I think it's important that, you're a client and so on. And of course, if it's not your client that's approaching you, and understanding your intentions or misunderstanding the way you're behaving, then I think that it's very important and is very acceptable in Israel to look a person appropriate. This is not what I meant. This is not what I would like when you come from a culture where, being polite is not speaking your mind, and your voice stood for compliance. Situation where you feel that any part of compromise, that tone of voice.
Tumatawa ako, naka-open yung video.
Okay, I think we need to silence our microphones. Everyone, thank you. Okay. When treating a man or being close to a patient's spouse, sexual harassment can occur, and it's important to be aware of it. Here are a few tips on how to deal with sexual harassment. There is a YouTube attachment here that you are welcome to look at your own time. And I just want you all to be aware of that and to know that we are sensitive about it, and we definitely don't condone it or encourage it. Okay, so, and you shouldn't obviously be exposed to it. Again, I ask, do you have any concerns about being a man or a woman? It's a caregiver, and you think that caregiving will be harder or easier for you because you are either a man or a woman, and you're invited to, to talk about it. And if you have other concerns, obviously as well. I'd like to talk about intercultural differences. There are differences in tradition, people, ethnic groups, different language expression, way of expressing itself. Every culture has its own way of defining conflict, passing messages, resolving conflict, and talking about it. Every culture has its own ways of expressing emotions and talking about their emotions. Obviously, we're all different, but some of it is also culture linked, as is pointed out here. And I want to also say that perhaps you know that in Israel we have a like perhaps other religions, we will be celebrating our new year by the lunar calendar, and the whole month of September is going to be a series of holidays. And I want to say that it's very emotional for people during the holidays all over the world. Perhaps you can identify with that. I think it's generally true. Most people have holidays, winter solstice, summer solstice, and these are transitional periods where most people do have a lot of emotional upheaval. And it always brings to mind, thoughts about who is here and who isn't here, who used to be here, how it was once, who I want to be here, who's inviting me, who's not inviting me. Is it difficult to be with family, or is it not difficult to be with family? And most of us in Israel do tend to celebrate, I think as most people do, holidays with family. And so the whole month of September is going to be charged with a lot of emotions. So I'm kind of, feel it necessary to be more tolerant. How to adjust to a new culture. be patient, give yourself time. This is obvious. It's important that you keep your culture and customs and traditions if you want to, and it's important to do so. A few tips for adjusting to a new culture. Again, here's a little short film that you can watch in your own time and perhaps get some tips about that. Patience, yes, patience is a very important trait to learn how to use for our surroundings and also for ourselves. Have you heard something about the Israeli culture, about our holidays? We'd like to know what perhaps you've heard, what you'll be expecting. Do you have any concern about adjusting to the Israeli culture? Do you have any questions about Israeli culture? I basically want to say that, in Israel, we are very loud. We talk directly, and we encourage you to say what's on your mind and what you feel and what you think. And we have a tendency to, and are speaking loudly in voice, not necessarily being should I say, we use our hands very often. If anyone is watching me, you're welcome to see this gesture that we do very often with our hand. Means some, maybe they'll speak so very patient. Share thoughts.
Or especially what I'm asking, how to handle this to non-semi-religious. Is there a difference between of the two invalid person on how to take care of them?
Okay, good question.
Do you have any input?
Well, I'd like to also say something about that, but I want to tell you that, you're not the only person that has asked that question of people coming to help us. Understand that it's a main concern how to understand if they are disabled. Is there a different way to relate to them? I want to say is that, like in many religions, I don't know what religions you are of, what faith you are of, but in Israel, there's so many different types. I mean, it's a big spectrum of how people will define themselves or how religiousness or non-religiousness. So I think that the best thing of the way people, what their customs are in terms of the clothing, there is something in the Torah person, what they style or not. And yes, that, living in a Jewish community, sometimes a person will define himself as being very religious and wear all these, different clothing attire, especially for holidays or for non-holidays. And then he would do something in his behavior that would, surprise you. That doesn't seem to be too religious. Or the opposite, someone that doesn't define themselves as very religious and, dresses like everyone else, but then in their prayer, give yourself time. What's important? Big deal in Israel, but I think especially in Israel where there are, so many rules that people adapt becomes their law. Everyone make mistakes, You're thinking about that because obviously during the holidays, people have special food they like to prepare or,
Yes.
whatever their customs in their home is. But you should know that if it is public home, you have to be on the day of it is thrown into the holidays.
Another question. We encourage to see and be with a religious family and they talk with a higher voice. Is that normal here?
A higher voice. You mean like in a tone or speaking someone, beneath them?
I think it's just loud. It seems to me that it's just a loud, people being
loud voice. Okay. Well, people speak in loud voices all over the country, and sometimes it's what
doesn't matter whether they're religious or not.
Right. And you'll open up the Israeli television, you'll be shocked. They're sitting there in a panel, screaming at each other, talking all at once. No one's listening to the other. They just want to voice whatever it is they want to say. And this, I guess, is a reflection of how we all behave, perhaps. But if you mean that people, religious people have it, and different kinds of people, nice ones, not so nice ones, and this is in order to necessarily have to accept, whatever. But yes, you may come across that kind of a situation also. Sometimes people think that they're better because they're higher educated. They have, I don't know, better blood. I don't know, in turn, and then there's always personality as well. Anyone else like to ask?
Good morning, Mas. We would like to know this coming September 6 to 9. Is it true that it is a New Year here in SA or unpaid? We don't New Year's and don'ts during that time because since we are new here, what we call
Okay, if it's a Jewish holiday, regular
Yes,
date for that day, perhaps you can answer those
Yeah, I will
questions
start
better.
mentioning that we will share it with you later today. 2 more records that would discuss with you your rights and obligations, and we'll talk also about, generally speaking, vacation and sick leaves, etc. And we'll mention how many religious days off you have. We'll talk not about only about just annual vacation, but also for religious days. How many in a year you can take, and also we'll explain how you should be paid for extra hours. Now, for the days that should be off, and if you work for the days, it should you should pay higher. But
okay lang.
maybe I'll suggest again, maybe you will watch those 2 records, and then afterwards, if you still have questions, you will write us the specific questions that you will still have, and then we will provide you with answers. So immediately, or if you will need to check with the government authorities to provide you with exact information, and we'll get back to you. Related to, and I heard you also ask about the specific holidays. So yesterday and this morning we shared some information about Israeli cultural background. We mentioned many holidays there, but now during September you have at least 3 main holidays: Rosh Hashanah, Yom Kippur, and Sukkot. We can write down the names for you. There are plenty accessible information on that. Yeah, so it's also for us always a question how much information to give to you, and how would be too much or too little. So we decided to provide a scope with listing a few of the holidays, but not to start to teach about each one of the holidays. But then again, there are a lot of accessible information on that for those for you who are interested to find out, and then to remember maybe that that what you will read, it would be general information, and it would be correct, but still it wouldn't necessarily give you the specific information how the specific family that you will be in will celebrate this holiday. So you still have to learn not only from the books, from people, but also what happens in this in each household. Yeah, so
Okay, thank you, ma'am.
that's maybe that. No problem.
Hindi ko naiintindihan ang sagot niya.
Tara, you on mute.
Malaman kung paid ba tayo or unpaid.
Tsaka yung ano mga dapat naman yan, is depende
Okay.
na sa employer.
Anyone else have questions or like to share something? Yes, go
Hindi ako
ahead.
naka-mute ako.
I see you. Go ahead.
No, it's not me.
First, hello, hi.
Yes, yes. Hi.
Okay. First of all, thank you, Miss Sarah, for sharing your wisdom. I would like only to share my reflections about the core values, especially in compassion. Caregiving is not only a job; it is a life, a calling. Remember, my brothers and sisters, that many are applying, but few are chosen. And we are the chosen one. God chosen you. God bless you. God loves you. Spread the love.
Wow,
Thank you. That's all.
that's wonderful. Thank you for sharing that. Okay. What is your name? Is your name Wisdom?
Yes.
Oh, I like your name. I see it on the screen, but I wasn't sure. Sometimes people write different things. Well, Wisdom, I see that you're a very spiritual person, and I definitely can connect to that. And I'm not a religious person, but I feel your spirit. And
Thank you.
I think you're going to enjoy your stay in Israel. You'll have an opportunity, of course, to visit the religious places, of your faith. And yeah, it's a very spiritual place, this country. And I commend you for not being put off by whatever, the news media and politics put on about Israel and Israelis and so on. You'll find a very different experience, I hope, in your stay here. And also, I encourage you to learn about, Judaism and the family that you're going to live with. Obviously, you'll have to. But also, I encourage you to try in a nice way to teach them about your faith. I think that most Israelis don't know don't know a lot about different faiths unless they're exposed to someone of a different faith. And I think that it's also a very worthwhile experience to, to learn about other people as well. So yeah. And
Sarah,
thank you for sharing.
thank you.
Yes.
I have 2 more questions
Okay.
written. Yeah, maybe we'll have more, but written we have so far 2 more questions. One is April asks us, she wants to ask if there is any specific food that we should avoid to serve to our client. I'm not familiar with the kosher. Can you give us some advice? Thank you. I may suggest, just as we said, maybe we'll send you a few links in the Viber group, just general laws about kosher food. And those of you who are interested, you're more than welcome to read. And then afterwards, just to remember that, something that we said before, even though there are very specific rules, still each family and each person, even within a family, may perform things somewhat differently. So even though those of you who are interested will read and learn some laws about kashrut, which, the
Dietary
laws
laws.
called,
Yes.
yeah, then still you need to check with the specific person and the family how they do it at their home, because you can it can be, I read, I learned, now I know. And we both with Sarah live in Israel, but still if we come to someone else's kitchen, we'll check if it's okay and how people would do something in their kitchen, because we understand the sensitive and we'll just respect that. So that's would be my advice. Sorry, would you like
I
to add
want to say something in addition to that. When people are disabled, they don't really have a whole lot of areas in their life where they have pleasure. So food is a very important part of that. That's still hopefully available to to disabled people. Not entirely, but you can understand that. And so food is very important, not just to them, but also to us. I like to eat. Yes, I like my food and I like what I like, and everyone is the same, I think. And so I think that it is necessary to talk about food and about kitchen and what is about, do you eat with the family or do you eat by yourself? Do you eat, can you put your own, obviously you have to eat, right? And do you make, probably not. Where can you put the things that you make, and can, what the dishes that you use perhaps? Don't be offended. All of those things are very important to talk about. And when you can make your own food, and when, maybe their smells of your food would be offensive to them. Sometimes spices that you're not used to can be offensive, and the other way as well. Perhaps they would be using spices that you're not used to that can be, difficult for you. And so all of those things, I really, I want you to think to the minute details, and to ask, hot water, can you, when you can bathe, how much hot water you can use, how much washing yourself and your clothes and taking care of your own personal issues. All of those things, they're very personal, but they really do need to be negotiated with the family that you're going to be living with. Obviously, it has to do with privacy, your own privacy, what's appropriate for you. And you have space that's going to be shared. Obviously, the kitchen, the living room. If you're not doing anything, can you sit in the living room, or would they rather that you sit in your room? Just things that you may even feel are not significant, but they could be significant to someone. So it's okay to ask. It really is okay to ask. And to be prepared for the answer. That's all. Anyone else want to say something?
There was another question, or one of 2 that will remain. The question that I will ask is related to handling of patient with difficulty in moving. Is there a possibility for us to request from our employer about gadgets needed in order to help us perform our job? Like, for example, a lifter for patient who is a wheelchair bound? Thank you.
Yes, okay. I welcome that question. I think that Absolutely. In Israel, we do have a very readily available all kinds of apparatuses to assist people that are disabled in all walks of life. In other words, in bathing, in motion, in eating. They're, usually they're not even, you don't even have to pay for them. There is a voluntary organization that provides all kinds of apparatuses, equipment, yes, apparatus, equipment. And I highly suggest that you share your difficulties. If you need to lift someone, if you need to move someone, there are all kinds of things. You can see them online and ask the family if they, if they would be assisting you and receiving them. Usually they don't even cost money, but if you don't say you need, something to assist you, then they won't know that you need it. And, you don't need to break your back or anything else. Margareta, you want to add something?
No, not one more thing.
Okay. As well as hearing and vision and all those, all of those things, we do have it all readily available, either through the national health system or through the individual health groups. Everyone belongs to one. You will also belong to one. So if you see that a person perhaps needs glasses, then, ask the family if he's been checked and tested. Perhaps you can take an active part in going to have him checked and getting the glasses or hearing aid, and those things are, if they cost money, they're not expensive and they are readily available. Okay. All kinds of, in the bathroom, for example, different levers and handles and support beams, and all of those things are available. Okay, so if you think you need something, yes.
Yeah, maybe I will add something that also you should be minded, of course, of your health. Yeah, because again, if you need some equipment or some assistance to, to perform your work better, as you said, it's not only about, you taking care of your patient, which you rightly concerned, but also of your own health, on your back, or, to be able to provide your help and care as much as possible, not to be traumatized by yourself. So from that point of view, I would also be minded, and responsible for yourself from that point of view. Yeah.
And if you're not sure what can help, I can only suggest that there is a service that is available to disabled people, elderly or not, through the Kupot Cholim, through the health groups. And what you do is you ask that the family invite an occupational therapist to do a home visit, and she would do an assessment of what that person needs. Sometimes it's changing lighting, moving carpets, perhaps something in the bathroom, perhaps if they have a bathtub, there's all kinds of, instead of a shower, there's all kinds of apparatus and instruments that are out there. Absolutely, take advantage of them. If you have questions, I think Margareta will direct you to who to ask. Any more questions or comments?
No.
Okay. I want to say something more about what Margareta said. Take care of yourself, okay? You are, sometimes I use the example that, on the flight here, the flight attendant told you to, if you're traveling with a child, first put the oxygen mask on you and then on the child's face so that you can be well enough to take care of them. And I really do encourage you to take care of yourselves. And any way that that you need to take care of yourselves, if negotiate with your family, the time that's appropriate for that, and do whatever is necessary for you to maintain your own strength and and to be in control. That's very important. Okay, I think Margareta, you have something else you want to add?
No, just to thank everybody, to let you know that that we'll share today, later, as I said, 2 records related to your rights and obligations. We won't meet tomorrow or share records with you, but we'll meet on Sunday at 4 p.m. And before then, in the morning, we'll also share with you another record. So yeah, so we'll stay in touch via group for the weekend.
So as we say here in Israel, Shabbat Shalom, which means have a peaceful Shabbat. And see you all on Sunday.
Shabbat Shalom.
Shabbat Shalom.
Thank you.
Tודה raba.
Shabbat Shalom, everyone.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Shalom.